Okay, so the purpose of today's activity is to do two things. Review the scientific method. Okay, that is, that you come up with the variables, the problem, the hypothesis, the materials, and the procedure for a lab that you would run in your imagination. Okay, because we're not actually going to run it. Which gives you a certain element of freedom, because as long as it's a reasonable experiment that can be run at least somewhere, you can make up that procedure, right? I have had people who did this lab and they said they wanted to test the effect of gravity on plant growth. They proposed that their experiment would be run in many different places where gravity would be different. There's nothing wrong with that from a purely scientific perspective. It would be impossible for us to actually do the lab, but as long as it's reasonable and the experiment is a true controlled experiment, I'm okay with that. All right? So you do have that element of freedom in that you can say, well, I need this super expensive piece of equipment to run this. That's fine. You're only running it in your imagination. So imagine you have this super expensive piece of equipment. Okay? It's fine. You're not going to actually run it. What I'm really looking for in this lab is that you understand or know or can demonstrate your knowledge of factors affecting plant growth. That's the second thing. That's what we talked about yesterday. And can design a controlled experiment. Okay? And in a controlled experiment, you would have to demonstrate to me that you know, all right, these are the things that can affect the growth of a plant. This is the thing I want to test. And so in my experiment, I'll make sure that all these other things are controlled, and you'll tell me how. Okay? That's really what I'm looking for in terms of the procedure, the variables, the materials. Okay? Is that you are doing things to make sure that you are truly only testing the one factor that you want to test. Okay? I looked at this thing last night and I actually changed it a little bit. I previously had a separate section on this about an abstract, and I think I mentioned that the other day. I took it out. Okay? The reason I took it out is you have a lot of stuff coming up, you have an exam coming up, and I want you to be able to finish this in class. Okay? It's not due at the end of class, but I don't think it's unreasonable to think that you could finish this easily, okay, in the class period. All right? That said, I still want you to do a good job, but by the time I get done blabbing, you'll still have an hour to work on this thing, which is lots of time. Okay, put it on my desk. Is there another one in there? Yeah, there's a couple other ones in there. Just put that one on my desk. Okay, so in this activity, you will be completely designing a lab experiment to study the effect of a variable of your choice on the growth of plants. It can be anything you want, all right? It could be about water, it could be about light, it could be about dirt, whatever, okay? You just have to figure out what it is you want to test, okay? And then you have to make sure that you actually design an experiment that tests only that. Right? So you come up with a problem. What is the effect of light on plant growth? Please do something more complex than that. Okay? You could talk about different amounts of light or something like that, but please make sure you do something a little more complex than I'm going to put one plant in the dark and one plant in the light, and I'm going to watch them for 3 weeks, and I'm going to watch the one in the dark die. Okay? I know you guys are better than that. Okay? So let's have something a little more complex, even if it's just different amounts of light or different colors of light or whatever. Okay? So the variable could be nutritive, amount of water or sunlight. It could be conditional, orientation, temperature. Okay, all those kinds of things are all fair game. Okay, your experiment should follow the same pattern as any other lab we have done in class. State a problem. What is the effect of blah on plant growth? Okay, have a hypothesis. So if this thing affects plant growth in this way, and describe your experiment, then this is what's going to happen. Predict your results. These plants are going to grow the best because. Okay, just like you would in any other lab that we have done. Okay, you will need to create your design. So that means you'll have to identify your manipulated variable and explain in the way you have done in all your other labs. Identify your responding variable or variables. What is everybody's responding variable? The plant growth, yeah. But you have to decide how you're going to measure it. Okay, that needs to be in your description of your responding variable. You can't just say Responding variable, plant growth, because I'll measure it. Okay, well, how are you going to measure it? Because honestly, it could differ depending on what plant you choose to do your experiment on. Okay, if you're choosing to do your experiment on beans, well, you might measure the height or the number of beans that get grown or the number of blossoms or whatever. But if you're doing your experiment with a carrot, well, you might measure the depth of the carrot or the mass of the carrot or something like that. Okay, the plant is kind of going to dictate how you measure the growth of the plant. And it would be okay, / a good idea, to have both a quantitative measure of the plant growth, that is something you can actually measure, and a qualitative measure of the plant growth. Okay? That's not something that's measured, but something that's recorded either through pictures or anecdotal references, okay, or things like that. Okay, so you could, say your qualitative observation is you're taking pictures of the plants each day from the same position, or you're just going to describe how the plant looks. Don't say how the plant feels, because you can't talk. You can talk to the plant, that's not crazy. If the plant talks back, that is. Okay, so you can't ask the plant how it feels. You can, but if it answers, stop your experiment. Okay, all right. Now, so you would include in your procedure, okay, sorry, your controlled variables. Remember, in your controlled variables, I need at least 3. Okay, so 3 controlled variables. They're the other things that could affect the growth of your plant. Make sure you describe how you're controlling them and why you're controlling them. That would be what effect would they have on the growth of the plant. Okay? So it could be as simple as all the plants are being grown in the same kind of dirt. If dirt wasn't a manipulated variable. Okay? Things like that. Okay? Or same amount of water, or same temperature. Like you gotta come up with those kinds of things. All right. You're in your procedure, okay? In your procedure, you need to, in your materials, talk about what things you're going to need. Dirt, water, okay, stuff like that. But don't just say dirt and water. Talk about, like, how much are you going to need, okay? How big of pots are you going to grow it in? Right? Are you going to grow it in pots, or are you going to just grow it outside in the field or in the backyard? Okay, what are the materials that you're going to need? Plants, okay, specifically maybe what kind of plant you're going to use. Okay, that could all be important stuff that needs to go in your materials. And then for your procedure, okay, talk about how are you starting this? Are you planting it from a seed, or are you buying plants from the store? How often are you watering it? How much water are you giving it? Okay, all those kinds of things, those little details are really important for someone who wants to run your experiment. If you just say, plant the plants and water them every couple of days, okay, so one person running this experiment comes over and waters them with a cup of water, and the next person comes along with a 5-gallon pail. Okay, like you have to be specific, okay, and that will affect your procedure mark for this experiment. If your procedure is not specific, explicitly detailed, okay, you will lose marks for that part. Okay, in the procedure is also where you will make sure that your controlled variables are controlled. Okay, if let's say the size of the pot is something that you identified as a controlled variable, you need to tell people in the procedure how you go about doing that. Okay, does that sort of make sense, what I'm looking for there? And that's where it ends. At the end of the procedure, that's it. So everything that you're handing in to me is going to have a problem, a design, a hypothesis, materials, and a procedure. Those things. Okay? Everybody with me there? Right? So you'll be marked on your design, same as you always are. Problem and variables go together. You'll be marked on your hypothesis, same as you always are. Okay? You'll be marked on your equipment and procedure, okay, and overall. Okay, so those categories are exactly the same as they are in all of your other labs. Okay, nothing's going to be different. You're just designing it instead of me.
In our materials, do you want us to say the exact amount of water, or do you say that for the procedure?
Well, no. So let's say in the procedure is where you would say how much water you're giving it. And
yeah, you can just say water.
You can say water. Yeah, in the materials you can say water, but you might have like a cup that you use or some sort of device.
Can you just say that in the procedure then, instead of?
Well, you can say how much you would put in there, but you should probably have the device you use to water with as one of your materials. So if you got a watering can, that's, you know, the volume of, right, we would put that in there. All right, any other questions? Okay, get to it, okay? I think you guys should be able to, if you don't get done, you should be super close, okay? It is due Friday, because I do think it's not unreasonable for you to finish in class today, okay? I am not meaning for this to be hours of homework for you, okay? I'm meaning for this to be no homework for you,